Okay, good evening and welcome back again. We've had a couple of weeks away because I've been doing school things, parents' evenings and all that sort of thing. So we're back, and if you remember, before we were looking at the work of Ben Nicholson and abstract art, and we were taking some of his ideas to create some landscape paintings onto hard surfaces, and we're using sandpaper and then painting back into the compositions. And we've looked at collage, we've done a whole range of different things. Now, one thing that I've wanted to do a little bit of for a little while is do some monoprinting. So there's lots of ways of doing monoprinting. One of them is using a jelly plate, which is quite a new thing to me. A few years ago, I went to the Kerwin Print Study Centre and learnt all about this type of monoprinting. So you have like a jelly plate, which actually is kind of a bit sticky and sort of spongy, not spongy, but springy. And you put acrylic paint on, and then you can press things into the jelly plate, like anything from a key to bubble wrap to anything like that. And then you lay your paper back over the top and you pull off a print. Okay, so we're going to have a little play around with a jelly plate, but I'm also going to show you that you don't necessarily need to have one of these things in order to create a monoprint either, and you can do it with acrylic paints. Obviously, the thing about acrylics is that it's kind of a plasticky medium, so it dries really quickly, but because it's kind of it's kind of got this elasticity to it, when it dries, you can peel it off things. And if you've used acrylic paints before, you'll remember like that it dries really hard and you can kind of peel it off your palette sometimes. So it lends itself quite well to a jelly plate, especially. A little bit different. You have to work quite quickly with monoprinting normally anyway. But the other thing is I'm taking inspiration from the artist Barbara Rae, who was one of my favorite artists for a very long time. Because of the wonderful colours and the mark making she does. So I believe she does monoprinting, but she also does a lot of screen printing and creates these very beautiful and very colourful abstract landscapes as well. So I'm going to just talk briefly through some of the things that I've been experimenting with in the first few days. Then I'm going to show you how I've created a landscape. And then perhaps you can have a little try out of this really interesting technique yourself. Okay, so let's have a look over here. So here's what we were doing before. If you remember, we looked at how we can have overlapping shapes, we can have textures within the pieces of work that we were doing, working from a drawing using more angular sort of lines and things like that. So whereas it isn't particularly abstract, it is sort of breaking down shapes and looking at those shapes and learning how to create or to focus on the very clean, almost geometric forms to create something different than the original image. So we explored that. If you're still working on it, don't forget when you finish to post what you've done, because it's really inspiring to see the sorts of things that you've been coming up with. So I'm going to show you some Barbara Rae abstract landscapes here. I've got a little video of her talking. She was a judge in a competition in Scotland a few years ago, but she talks briefly about her work. So I'm going to show you that. So on here you can see all of these pictures have multiple layers of color on top of each other. Sometimes those colors are a little bit transparent, so you get some of the marks that were produced underneath coming back through on the colors that are printed on top, and you get these wonderful kind of textures and things on here. So let's see if I can just zoom into one of these so you can get a little bit of a closer look. Here we go. So all these really beautiful colors we've got here, really nice sort of warm color palette on here. We've got some brush strokes, and I add some brush strokes to my own landscape that I did, but we can see these kind of brush strokey marks going across here, which could have been produced using a monoprint. A monoprint, by the way, basically the mono part of monoprint means that you only get one. So mono being one print from each time you pull a print off of a print plate. So now let's have a look at some of the other things that I've got here for you. I can't remember what I've got next. Let's just have a look. So here, and I've got these actually to show you in a second, but these are some examples of some of the prints that I've been producing over the last few days while all the students were doing their exam at school. So all of these were produced on a Gelli plate, and you'll see on here that I've used different types of things here to create the print basically. So the first one I'm going to show you is going to be the shell one that I've got up here. Now you might be thinking, well, how am I going to, this isn't a landscape and things like that, but you can create lots of different textures and layers, and that's what this is here to demonstrate, which can then be incorporated into a landscape as well. So these were basically some of those are they called escallops, scallop shaped shelled, oh my gosh. So basically the surface of the Gelli plate, as I've mentioned, is very, very sort of spongy or soft, and you can push down into the acrylic paint, and basically that object will pull away with its bumpy surface, with its relief surface. It will pull away some of the acrylic paint and leave an imprint underneath. So the little circles you can see up there in the corner were basically from the lid of a glue, like a glue sort of lid, like a Yoo-hoo glue lid, and all of these little lines here were from the corner of a row of staples that I found in my drawer at school as well. And then you'll see there's bits of blue, that's from the previous print that I had on there as well. Now the yellow, what happens is with the when I did this in brown to begin with, and then obviously, as I mentioned before, and as you know, acrylic paint will dry really, really quickly. So you can reactivate the paint by using a brayer or a roller and applying some other colors. So here I've rolled over the top of it some yellow, and I'll show you how that works in a few minutes. So basically it reactivated the brown with the yellow, which means you can pull off any dry bits that have already dried on the acrylic. Let's just have another look at one more. So here's this one. So this was just a few lids, I think. This was a pot, a water pot, I think. I just got the top of the water pot and printed, and then added blue behind it, just there. And this one over here is, there it is. This one, don't know why I keep turning around like that. So here, this was a lot of fun actually. So I used art materials on this one. So, and that you can see the staples again. Just turn that one. Oh, sorry, wrong one. That one. So here you can see the glue lid again, just down the bottom. And I hadn't really looked at this, but this bit is a fluffy towel. So I just laid a fluffy towel on top of the wet paint, and it created this texture. And then we've got staples. Look, there's a pencil sharpener just over there on the left, and the whole thing has been printed inside of a paint palette. And then to reactivate the red paint, I rolled green on the back. Okay, so that's the kind of thing you can do with monoprinting on a Gelli plate. I'll show you some other stuff in a moment as well, where you can use a just use a plastic surface or something like that to pull off a print with some brush strokes and things as well. So now after that I decided I'm going to try and make a landscape. So thinking back to Barbara Rae's work, I've used all those techniques that I've just shown you to start to create some very abstract kind of landscapes with brush strokes on, with at the top of the one on the left there was this fishy sort of texture or pattern that I found on a board, and then there's circles and all that sort of thing that I've used to create this abstract landscape based on a photograph that I'd printed off. Okay, so, and this is an example. I don't know if this is done with a Gelli plate, but certainly there's some interesting shapes and things in this landscape to create all these wonderful textures. So we've got larger ones in the foreground, slightly smaller in the midground, and then the area where the water is, I think, was painted afterwards, but that's my guess. And then as we go to the back, we've got several layers of different colors and then a nice solid sky. So we have something recognizable as being a lovely landscape over here. So that was an example I want to show you. And then finally, this is the photograph that I've been using to experiment with my landscape. It's gone in reverse because that's one thing you've also got to remember, of course, is that when you print anything as a monoprint or lino or whatever it is, it's always going to come out in reverse. And that's something I'm really guilty of always forgetting. So my mountain in this case is on the other side, but it doesn't matter. I'm having fun with it, just experimenting. Okay, right. So I'm going to show you very briefly a video of Barbara Rae talking about her work. It's very brief and she's trying to encourage people to enter an art competition in Scotland. So let's have a look. I'll just see if I can get that set up and we'll have a quick look and see what she has got to say. There we go. And play.
There's no such thing as sitting around waiting for it.
Oh, I'm just going to make that a bit, see if I can't get it all in, hang on.
Inspiration. You just pick up the paintbrush and start. I don't do landscape art. I use landscape as a means to create a template and a subject from which I can experiment in the studio. Landscape is a vehicle, I think, for me. You have to learn things about your own work and question what you're doing. And so in order to solve problems in a painting, I have to go through a list of questions and analyze it. But the main thing is you have to just keep on working. There's always risks involved. But you can't be static. You've got to attempt something different to move forward. The person that you're competing against is yourself. This competition is for everybody, from the youngest to the oldest, amateur artists, professional artists, to emerging artists. We want you all to exhibit. It's an idea of landscape. It's not landscape per se. There are many different kinds of landscape, political landscape, the dream landscape, so many different ways of interpreting it. It's not going to be a narrow definition. It'll bring that concept to the public view. There's no barrier to what you use. You can use anything you like to express your idea.
Okay, so I wanted to show you all of that because I thought it was really interesting what she said as well about taking risks and things. So this technique is a little bit like we experiment to see what is going to happen, and then we work with that idea as well. Okay, now this is my little book that I made when I went to the Kerwin Study Centre. So let's see if I can get in a bit closer to that. There we go. So obviously the first one on here, I did the stereotypical thing of printing by hand, and I got a lot of the I actually got detail, including my fingerprints and things, but you can see there's lots of other layers on here. These little dots were created with something a bit like Lego, and this crosshatch was created with by moving something which had a raised surface on it and crossing it over and so forth. So there's a lot of fun to explore and experiment with. I'll just show you a few other little bits in here. Another thing you can do is you can also print feathers and plants, and they can all be included within your piece of work. This circle was created by having a cutout of a circle, so that the circle was the bit left over, and then everything that was masked was not printed, and everything that was masked or was open was printed inside as well. So that was really good fun. And then you can buy all sorts of things, or you can get, I've got some textured wallpapers and things like that, so you can print those and you can start laying. You can buy stencils, which I think somebody mentioned they'd done earlier as well. The other thing, which I'm not going to do tonight because I'm not a master at this, but it is fairly straightforward, is you can also pull off magazine pictures and things, glossy images from magazines. You can see there's a chap here that I've printed as well, and then you can put on all sorts of different shapes. But these are just a few of the things you can do. Look, here's some glossy magazine words that I've pulled off as well, and shapes as well. So there's absolutely loads of things. The possibilities are quite endless, really. So during the last few days I've experimented quite a bit. So these are some of the things that I've tried out. I'll just show you the jelly plate because I'm aware that I haven't shown you that. So this is the jelly plate. It comes in like when you buy them, they come in these plastic cases. So if you do get a jelly plate, then what you want to do is keep it inside of this, because it retains the quality of it. It keeps it sort of in better condition. Mine's really dirty at the moment because I've been using it quite a lot in the last few days, and a good thing to clean these off with is some like baby wipes and things like that. But it's quite interesting. I actually made one of these myself, but it had a bit of texture on it. These are dead smooth, and they're kind of, look, they're made of gelatin and glycerin, and this one I suspect has got something else in it, like some surgical spirit to help it keep its shape. But it's lovely, and for some reason the ones that you buy smell really nice as well. That might be an opinion, but so that's the jelly plate. And yeah, these are some of the things that I've been using. So I've got somebody to give me a piece of wood, and you can see on here that it actually printed the texture of the wood as well. And then we've got bubble wrap as well. And this is a really cool thing. If you just want to experiment, you've got things like scissors and things, because as I just showed you, it's really soft, so you can print all sorts of objects and things like that as well. This was done with these tools that I bought online, only a few pounds, but they're like doing icing on cakes, I think, something like that. But you can scrape those across the surface. And there's my ones with the staples. Showed you bubble wrap and tools, various things, shells. This is wallpaper, textured wallpaper. So that, you know, stuff like this that you can buy. I got all this for free off the B&Q as samples. So there's lots of things you can do with it. And you may be thinking, oh my gosh, how much paint am I going to use? You don't need hardly any paint to do it either. Now, if you don't have a jelly plate, you can use something like this. So this is an old whiteboard that you can use in classrooms and things, but you could also just use something very smooth. You could use a baking tray paper, tracing paper, waxed oven paper, I think it is. You can use stuff like that as well to create these things. So I showed you my landscape earlier on. So here's I'll just zoom back out again. So here's one of the landscapes that I did, and you can see all the different layers and things on there. And this is the one that I showed you earlier. It's gone all very dark for some reason. See if I can make that a bit brighter in a minute. But so here you can see the one that I showed you earlier, which was based on that photograph that I had on earlier. And so this is done with lots of layering of all those different types of techniques, and a little bit of masking as well to stop some areas being printed and make other areas printed. This one was done using the whiteboard that I just showed you as well. As I said, you have to work quite quickly to be able to do it. All right, so I'll do a few of these to show you, hopefully, to show you how it works. So I'll do a couple of different things, and then you can have a go yourself at monoprinting at home. I'll show you the monoprinting as well. So obviously you need some, this is just normal cartridge paper, but there's no reason why you couldn't use something like tissue paper or found materials to print on and so forth. So let's get a little bit of blue, and you might need something like this, which is just a roller. You put your tiny amount of the acrylic on, get your roller. You can just use a paintbrush. You don't necessarily need a roller. And it will look really thin on the surface, which is good. You don't want too much paint, because it tends to, when you start doing stuff to it, it tends to create ridges and things like that. So there's my ink on that surface. And if I get one of these like cakey things, I can then draw lines into it. Like this. Let's just do anything, and maybe try a few of those, and maybe a little bit of bubble wrap. Peel that away, and then we get the paper. And one of the things about acrylic is, as well, with brayers or with rollers, is that the acrylic really does need washing off your roller as soon as possible. So one way of avoiding having too much of the acrylic paint on your roller is to roll it with the back, I found. So hopefully this will work. There you go. Oh, lovely. What a beautiful print. There. Okay. In a minute, I'll talk about how we can create a landscape using these things. So other things you can do are, you can mask some areas off. So I've just got some newsprint here. So I'm going to get a bit more of the blue. I'm going to roll it out like this. And this is the technique I used for a lot of the landscapes that I've started to experiment with. So a little bit more, and you can get all these nice torn edges There you go. Okay, so let's tear a bit of this newsprint here. Stick it down like that. Could do anything really. I could just put another bit there if I wanted to, and then I could put some more marks in. Doesn't have to be in that order. And then another sheet of paper over the top. Use the old brayer or roller. Transfer it. And I'll show you how to do the reactivating the paint if it gets a bit dry as well. Peel that off like that. There you go. So that hasn't printed so much marked, but I've masked off an area here, look, with the paper. And the other thing is you can also use the masked areas, particularly if you can use those within a collage. If you want to do a collage, that is, as well. Let's just, oh, that's the trouble with newsprint. It's very thin. Let's get that off. Didn't like that so much. Okay, I'm going to try another colour. So let's put some red on. Got any coming out? No, it's not going to come out, it's blocked. Go away. A bit too much there. If you do get too much ink, then the thing to do with that is to roll it off on the paper that you're working on. I worked on newsprint, actual newspapers at school, and I was doing experimenting. Oops. Right, let's try. Now I've got this, these are quite nice. I don't know where they came from. They're like these plasticky things. So you drop that on, press it, lift it off, and you get that. So, and you can put, this is wallpaper. So even as I'm speaking, especially in this warmer weather we're having, all of this will be drying. I've got quite a thick layer here of ink, not ink, of acrylics. Do some lines like that. And then what we can do then, I don't know if that's going to be not quite done yet. Piece of cardboard. Just see what happens with that. There we go. Like that. Now it is getting a little bit dry. I don't know if it's going to work. Let's just now roll. It's mixing a little bit because it's not quite as dry as I want it to be. It's a second colour. And then I've got this print that I did a minute ago. So I'm going to print it to about there. Now I don't know if you can see that because it's not particularly bright, but you've got some textures on that surface as well. And with this bit, I'm just going to draw back into it. Maybe try a few of these. And get some more paper. Yeah. So with the combination of masking and adding or drawing into a surface, you can create all these textures which then can be combined into your landscape. So I'm going to do another thing. So let's roll out a bit of yellow, because there's a print that's left over from here. I'm going to see if I can lift that, reactivate it with this yellow. Don't know if it'll work, but that's the whole sort of thing with this. Let's see what happens when I do whatever it is you're going to do. So I've got this here. So when I print this one, I'm going to try and line it up so it overlaps with what's on there, and we'll see if it actually prints. It says on my little book to use thinner paper for this. But I've been using this cartridge paper all day and it seems to work quite well. So up and away. Well, there you go. So I reactivated some of the stuff that didn't come off on the last print and overlapped it with the one that I did previously. So we're starting to get something that could potentially be like that could be a field or water, and I could have something up here as well and keep overlaying these different prints. Okay, the other thing you can do is this. So if I get a brush and a little palette, or a plate in this case, you could also just do a brush stroke. Just going to add a very tiny amount of water and do, let's do, and again you're going to need to work quickly. So as soon as I've done that, I'm going to see if I can put that on there, roller it again, pull it off, and we end up with brush strokes as well. So when I showed you the landscape earlier, I used brush strokes as well as there's the brush strokes, look, and I've also used drawing into the surface as well. I'm going to show you that. Let's do create a surface with the roller again, and then I'll just show you again how you can use just something smooth to create a print as well. So you could also literally just draw into the surface of your, you can find something to do it with, you could draw into the surface of your plate. You might not be able to see it very well in here. Let's try it on this piece. So look, that's the back of that, so I'm going to try and print onto that. Before it dries off too much, it's lifted off quite well, and now we've got all my marks on this area as well. So what I did when I actually went to do a landscape, and this is very, very loose, mind you, loosely interpreting a real landscape, was this, and then I painted in the houses that were in my photograph as a point of reference for a landscape as well, to draw us in a little bit more. And over here I painted over the top and used little mark making techniques over there as well, and I've added some more paint on this side as well. So I've actually painted into this as well as create this very abstract looking landscape. So last thing I'm going to do before I actually stop and answer any questions, put that away. I've made a hell of a mess now. So hopefully I can find what I'm looking for. So this is my smooth surface or old whiteboard. And I've got a piece of paper here. So you can use different types of brushes and stuff, but we can draw on here. And while that's wet, you can use a roller or you can just use your hands. And you can pull off the marks like that. So, and you can also do this, which is really nice too. So when I did these, I used the wallpaper. These are a few bits of wallpaper that I've got here. Paint the surface. So hold your brush at an angle like that. Paint over the surface of your texture. It doesn't have to be wallpaper, it could be anything you like that's got a bumpy surface. And oh gosh, I'll print onto the whiteboard then. And then just turn it over and rub it. And if you've got enough paint on there, it should work. There we go. So you can create patterns using textured surfaces. I've not tried it on here before. Just try it on there. So it just requires you to work quite quickly, but it's certainly possible to monoprint with various textured surfaces. There we go. And start to create a landscape. Or a very abstract one. People wanting to go abstract, we go in abstract. There we go. So we're building up all these shapes. Now, obviously this is on a white surface. You could either create all your textures first and then paint over the top with a second color, so that then when it's dry, obviously, so that then you're starting to build up layers of color that way. You could even use one of these to roll over the top of the surface as well. What I did when I created these landscapes, like the one I just showed you, like this one, is I first painted or printed the whole of my jelly plate in rectangles going across like this. So some of the colors overlapped at these points, and then I got some of my textures and started to print those on top. So I might say, right, I want all those bubble wrap techniques or textures to be here like that. And then with the mountain, I tore the paper into that shape and masked off one area, printed the other. So actually I had the mask going here, and then I did a jelly plate print across here. Okay. And then obviously you can also use brush strokes on top as well, like this. So it's really very experimental, and like Barbara Rae was saying, you know, taking risks and just practicing and trying out ideas will certainly give you unexpected results, but also ones that you can work with and start to paint and create something that's quite interesting and very different at the same time. So as I mentioned, these kind of points and the textures, when they're larger at the front, maybe like less distinct towards the back, give you this sense of leading you through, pointing you towards different areas of a landscape. Okay, so what I recommend is you get a photograph when you come to doing your landscape, and you use the photograph as a reference to help you construct a landscape. But first, have a go at doing some monoprinting and see where you get with that, and have fun with it as well. Try out lots of different colors and layers and stuff. All right, and we'll see what we end up with. All right. Oh my gosh, that was ages. Spent quite a long time talking, but I've been thinking about
It sounds amazing, Jamie. That's incredible. Wow. Didn't know you could do so much with the jelly plate.
Yeah, well, there's even more really, you know, that's just scratching the surface. So yeah, so I hope everyone has fun trying it out. So the task tonight is to create a landscape using monoprinting techniques. Okay, I'm going to do another one just using the whiteboard to show you how you can do that, and then perhaps I'll work into this one or the other one a little bit more this evening. Right, so I hope you enjoyed the demonstrations just before and explanations. So I wanted to show everybody how you can create a monoprint just literally using acrylic and this plastic plate, because I know that some of you might not yet or may not have a jelly plate. So it's pretty similar to a jelly plate this, but obviously you're getting different results. You can see the flat transfers that I've got on here have a lot more of a grainy sort of quality perhaps than that of the nice flat areas of color you can achieve with a jelly plate. So this is literally just an old plastic whiteboard that you would use to write answers on and all that sort of thing. And I'm working really quickly, applying textures and things as I go. So you can see there I just imprinted into the surface with wallpaper, and then I also use things like this bubble wrap and this comb, which you can use for obviously icing on cakes. I've just bought one of those because they're quite nice for making marks, and now I'm just cutting up some shapes of bubble wrap, which I just apply directly over the top, so you get some marks from that. Now the thing is to keep going, build up the surface with lots of different layers of color so it becomes more solid, and of course have a reference for what you're doing whilst you're working away. So that was me just adjusting the colors. A little bit of a problem this evening with the colors on this, but it's okay. We can work with this. So the next thing I'm doing here, as you can see, is I'm just highlighting the mountain towards the back, blue mountain, and in a little while, when I've done a couple of things, I start then to look at a photograph as a reference. There we go. So drawing directly on top. Now it'll be dry pretty much straight away. It's a thin layer of paint, it's warm, and also it means I can just start painting directly over the top. Even with a white, this is titanium white, even with a white on top of the background, you're still going to get some colors coming through. So in a second you'll see me highlighting the edges and shapes in the building, but leaving some not quite so full. And this is just adding some green and some yellow in a yellowy green in a minute. This bit I'm doing here is the trees that you can see behind the buildings in the photograph. And as I mentioned before, it's loosely done. It's inspiration that we're looking at here, and we're not trying to be so accurate representational in that sense. So in a minute or two, once I've added a bit more detail here, I start to add in ideas like the heather, using pink paint, like a pinkish sort of paint, and smaller brush strokes on top. And the idea also is just to let, like I mentioned earlier and Barbara Rae mentioned, is to take a risk and just see what happens. It doesn't have to be precious all the time. You can loosen up and just have a bit of fun with seeing what will happen on your paper. And indeed, this is what we did during this and the lesson, my other live class at Braun's. And I mentioned I did ask people to bring a palette knife. I wasn't sure whether we would use it, but I made sure that I used a palette knife to add some texture more towards the foreground here. So we've got this larger, more detailed interest at the front of the painting, and then slightly less as you go back. And you can see I've already emphasized the mountain in the background, but I've done it a little bit further. So something up there catches your eye, and then these larger marks reminiscent of Barbara Rae's work in the foreground to draw us through the landscape towards the houses and then beyond into the mountains. So because we're working very quickly, you make decisions quickly about what you're going to do. Rather than thinking too long, it's a very hurried, natural, intuitive approach to painting, which is a lot of fun. And it's one of those things, of course, if you work in this way constantly, you work in this way all the time, your decisions and your focus become even more refined. So you end up creating new ideas each time, but with a little bit of surprise along the way, risk taking, as we mentioned. So I hope you've enjoyed this evening, and I hope you have fun trying ideas out, and let me know what you come up with. Try and post it so we can see and share what your experience of this was. Have a great week, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Bye now. Bye.